13th century. Looking up to our left, we can see the town walls rising to their highest point, and they constitute the finest and most completely preserved example left in Britain. Inside the walls, the town was laid out in a grid pattern with space for a town square or market square. It's ahead of the bus and it's known as Lancaster Square.
What's going to be?
What it is?
Just about.
Comes up every time. They just off that way going.
Oh, yeah. What Catholic that?
I can't remember now.
We are now briefly outside the town walls in Town Ditch Road, so named because of the base of the walls once lay the town ditch, an open sewer where all manner of rubbish was thrown. The walls are about 1,400 yards in length, with 21 semicircular towers spaced out along them. Removable wooden platforms would have spanned the gap between, so that in the event of a hostile attack, the platforms would be removed, creating a break in the circuit, isolating those sections that were under siege.
Bus has smashed into that wall down there once before.
That's not good, is it?
No.
Gets a bit tired, doesn't it?
Hey?
Gets a bit tired, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think the bus went a bit fast and it hit the wall.
Oh, I see.
So it had to reverse and then come down here.
Ahead of the bus, we see once again the magnificent castle. You can just see some of the traces of the limestone wash on the walls. And as we leave Conwy, look to the base of the castle walls at the oblong holes. They were known as latrines, and there are no prizes for guessing what came out of there. Any invader wouldn't dare to attempt to climb up into the castle through those holes.
It's a nice castle, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's got
Part of it you do have to pay to go in, but there's nothing there.
No. I think it's just a tour, really.
Yeah. Oh, that's new. Because that used to be Nat West Bank. Back to Llandudno.
Look to our right at the two bridges. The furthest away from us is a tubular railway bridge, and closest to us is Thomas Telford's Road Bridge. Telford was a brilliant engineer and took great care in the building of this bridge by dipping the metal in linseed oil to preserve it. The bridge opened in 1826. The bridge beyond it carries the main railway line, and it was the first of Robert Stephenson's tubular designs and opened in 1848. The modern bridge we've just passed through opened in 1958 to ease the increasing flow of traffic passing over Telford's Road Bridge. Increased traffic flow in the 60s caused dreadful problems in Conwy, and so a scheme was devised to build a road tunnel under the estuary. As we cross over this next bridge, take a look down to the left and you can see the vehicles disappearing into the town. Construction of this massive project began in 1986 and it is made up of 6 reinforced concrete
That used to
prefabricated
be a banana
units.
factory.
The crested basin was created and the trench for the
Yeah.
section was excavated.
You know when there were steam trains coming in here, all that lot there, that used to be where they stored the things, you know,
the skin from bananas.
yeah, they used to store bananas in there, and, like, you know, like the cargo and that,
Yeah.
like goods trains.
Yeah.
Well, that's where they used to store everything there.
The single most important role that Conwy played during the Second World War was production of the Millbury Harbour. With the Allies planning the D-Day landings, military chiefs had to work out a way of getting all the necessary equipment from the naval vessels worn out at sea across very shallow beaches to the landing ground. It was decided that a floating harbour was needed, to be built in sections and then floated across the channel and assembled on the French beaches. In great secrecy, suitable areas were chosen to build sections of the Millbury Harbour, and Conwy was included. The area used is now the marina, and as a reminder, the local pub is called the Millbury. Many of the town's hotels and boarding houses were taken over by men working on this project, and in addition, the government billeted many evacuee children in Conwy and the surrounding countryside at the beginning of the war. It was far safer for them here in the countryside rather than in large cities like Liverpool, Manchester, or Birmingham. On the left, you can see the boats in the marina. There has been a dock here since the 12th century, but a large dock was built in the 1880s to transport by rail massive amounts of high-quality roofing slate, quarried at Llandudno, further up the Conwy Valley. In this century, the dock has been transformed into a marina, and a spa hotel called The Key after this history. This opened in 2006, and the houses in this area are very well sought after.
Very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. I wasn't. Used to be a library there.
This is the little town of Deganwy. The name means port on the River Conwy, and there's been a settlement here since long before Conwy Castle was built. One of the town's dubious claims to fame is that it suffered nearly 100% mortality in the Black Death of 1349. Here is a hop-on, hop-off stop should you wish to explore the beach and refreshment opportunities available. Please be aware that this trip is a one-way only, and you will need to reboard the same side of the road as you get off. On our left is the Conwy estuary. The name Conwy is thought to be pre-Welsh. The river is 27 miles long and rises in the heart of Llandudno beyond Conwy. Despite its normally tranquil appearance, the river conditions are deceptive, and at times it can become quite treacherous. Over to our right is a series of rocky grass hills. this is one of the most historic sites in Llandudno. Originally the site of the 4th century wooden fortress known as the Badre. At that time, North Wales was being invaded by Irish warriors. A northern tribe, the Gododdin, came south to protect the area from the invaders. This tribe was led by a chieftain known as Conwy, and he established his headquarters here at the strategic vantage point of the Badre. Without Conwy's intervention, North Wales would almost certainly have fallen to the Irish invaders. His descendants went on to become kings of Gwynedd, and the bloodline can actually be traced to our present monarchy. The Badre later became the stronghold of King Milgun of Gwynedd, and indeed, this part of North Wales appears to have been the capital of Gwynedd at this time. Look slightly over to our left, and in the distance you may be able to see the Isle of Anglesey and Puffin Island, separated from the mainland by the famous Menai Straits. By the shore, you can see Maesty Golf Course, an 18-hole course of championship standard. Llandudno is built on an isthmus, which is basically a finger of land pointing out into the sea, and it has a west shore and a north shore. If you look ahead of you and above the rooftops, you can see the most distinctive landmark in town, the Great Wall, a huge lump of Carboniferous limestone, some 300 million years old. In the 3rd century, the Romans, marching forth from their legendary Castra Diva fortress of Chester, found the wall to be a great source of copper, and some of the copper mines are still here, although no longer used, after the Romans and the Vikings also mined for copper. Or is a Viking word meaning sea dragon or sea monster. There are 2 fantastic ways to visit the Great Hall, either on our vintage coach tour around the Marine Drive or open top mini coach tour, which takes in both the Marine Drive as well as its summit. These both operate daily from the pier bus stop where our tour ends. Llandudno is Wales's largest resort and is very much the product of the Victorian era. It came into existence primarily for tourists during the mid-19th century, although man has less structures here dating from at least 3000 BC. For the last 100 years or so, it's undoubtedly been the queen of the North Wales resorts, with many fascinating reminders of the elegance of the Victorian period. The name Llandudno, how did it come about? Llan is the Welsh name for church or parish. Tudno comes from the name of the 6th century monk Saint Tudno, who founded a church on the Great Hall, bringing Christianity to the area. There is still a church on that site dedicated to Saint Tudno. So basically, Llandudno means the parish of Tudno. This area was home to a Mr. Charles Pepper. He came to fame as the designer of the Royal Air Force insignia. There was much conjecture at the time as to the identity of the bird represented on the badge. Many thought it was an eagle, but there was always some doubt. Some years later, Charles Pepper was to assure everyone that it was in fact modelled on a stuffed albatross from the National Museum. Near us here once stood the Penmorfa Hotel, originally a private house built in 1862 for the very Reverend Henry Liddell, Dean of Christ Church in Oxford. Liddell stayed here during college breaks with his family, his retinue of servants, and important and privileged guests. One of Liddell's daughters was called Alice, and this is the Alice on which Lewis Carroll based the famous character in Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass. This is the West Shore, a stretch of golden sand overlooking Conwy Bay. This is a popular spot for families, water sports enthusiasts, and especially walkers, as the Wales coastal path runs right along the shore. There is a boating lake, children's play area, cafe and toilet facilities for those wishing to alight here. As the bus turns, look down to the little island on our left. This is our bus stop for the West Shore. If you are leaving us here, check with your driver for the time of later buses. The circular glass building here is another relic from Victorian times. It was built as a shelter and waiting room for the tram system that operated here between 1907 and 1956. The trams transported local townsfolk and holiday makers around Llandudno, and they could even travel further afield too, as far east as Conwy Bay. Much of the original tramway still exists, although modern streets have now largely covered them over. One family has dominated the life of the promenade for well over 100 years, and no holiday or even day out for Llandudno would be complete without a visit to Codman's Punch and Judy Shop. Richard Codman arrived here in his horse-drawn gypsy caravan in 1864. During his stay, one of his horses died suddenly, leaving him and his family stranded. So Richard spent his time whittling driftwood from the beach, and whilst doing this, had the idea of carving heads and doing a Punch and Judy show, something he had seen during his travels. And remarkably, it's still operated by Richard Codman's descendants. This is the stop for Penderyn Whisky and the Homefront Museum.
You have to pay in there.
Yeah, on that side, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's another church.
I know I used to go there.
Yeah.
On our right now is the J.D. Witherspoon Public House. It stands on the original site of the town's market hall. Later, it became the Palladium Theatre. And if you take a closer look at this splendidly restored and renovated building, you can see how it resembles the famous London Palladium.
Like that? Yeah, I'll let you know.